What if the man you rented to avoid your ex ended up becoming the one person who truly knew your heart? I only wanted him for 2 weeks. But fate had other plans and love doesn't follow contracts. Have you ever felt like your life was on autopilot, like everyone else held the remote but you? That was me. My name is Zara, 28, emotionally exhausted, professionally burnt out, and single. Not that I had time to date even if I wanted to. It all started with a wedding invitation. The kind that feels like a glitter-coated slap in the face. My cousin Lana was getting married again to her third fiancé, and she wanted me to come with a +1. Don't come alone this time, Zara, she had said sweetly, her voice laced with sugar and superiority. Everyone's been worried about you. You deserve happiness too. Happiness. Right. I looked around my apartment, quiet, unbothered and perfectly lonely. I liked the silence most days. But somehow, her words stayed like an echo that refused to fade. Worse yet, my ex, Ethan, was invited too. Ethan, the man who once said I was lucky he dated me. The same Ethan who still called, texted, and occasionally showed up near my work by coincidence. I stared at the wedding invite and groaned. That's when a friend jokingly sent me a link. Rent a boyfriend for weddings, reunions, and annoying exes. I laughed. Then I clicked. Then I stared. There were actual profiles, like a dating app, except you paid by the hour. They all looked like models. Too polished, too fake. It felt desperate, and yet I kept scrolling. One profile caught my eye. Name: Aiden, race, age 30, background former literature major, works freelance, calm, respectful, can play piano, reads people well, specializes in family events. Review comment made me believe he was really in love with me. Too good at his job. Anonymous client. There was something in his eyes. His smile wasn't the fake hire me grin most profiles had. It was soft, maybe even sad. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the book now button like I was buying a ticket to my own emotional demise. But I clicked it. I booked him for 2 weeks starting 3 days before the wedding. Just long enough for my family to see me happy and for Ethan to realize I'd moved on. It was just pretend. A show. A band-aid on a bleeding self-esteem. Or so I thought. The knock on my door came promptly at 10 o'clock a.m. 3 days later. I opened it. And there he was. Tall, effortlessly handsome. Black hair slightly tousled. Like he hadn't tried too hard. Dark eyes with a gaze that somehow saw too much. Dressed in a navy blue shirt and worn jeans. A duffel bag slung casually over his shoulder. Zara, he asked, his voice low and calm. I nodded. Aiden, he smiled. Ready to meet your nightmare ex and overly affectionate aunties. I laughed too loud, too quickly. I wasn't ready. Not for this. Not for him. Come in, I said, stepping aside. As he walked past me, something shifted in the air. He didn't look around the apartment like people normally do. He looked at me. Don't worry, he said gently. This won't be weird. I've done this before. Just tell me the story you want to tell, and I'll fill in the blanks. We sat on my couch, knees just barely not touching. I explained the plan. Fake dating, pretend memories, the basics. Where we met, a bookstore. CAF. Our first date, he read me poetry. He raised an eyebrow at that one. And how he won my heart. By saving me from a panic attack in a grocery store. It was dramatic, but I wanted to sell it. He nodded, committing every word to memory. You want this to feel real. he asked suddenly. I blinked. What? This story, he said softly. If you want your family to believe it, if you want him to believe it, we'll need chemistry. And for that, you'll have to let me in. Just a little. I opened my mouth to argue, to say this is fake. But nothing came out, because part of me wanted it to feel real too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about how my life had come to this, paying someone to pretend to love me. Was it pathetic? Or just practical? My phone buzzed. Aiden, quick Q, what's your favorite book of all time? I blinked, surprised. Then typed back, Little Women. Don't judge me, he replied instantly. Only makes me like you more. That scene where Jo says she can't love Laurie. Brutal. Real. Honest. You like real stories, huh? I smiled. Yeah, I do. Have you ever watched someone blend into a crowd so perfectly, you'd think they'd belong there all their life? That was Aiden. We hadn't even reached the venue and he was already in character, holding the passenger side window slightly open, playing soft music like he knew I hated silence, and glancing at me just enough to keep me steady without making it awkward. I had coached him the entire drive. Names, faces, how my Aunt Rowena always asked invasive questions, and how my cousin Lana loved subtle power plays disguised as kindness. He didn't take notes. He just nodded, absorbing everything, and then, just before we got out of the car, he reached across the seat, gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and smiled, ready to make them all wish they'd never pitted. You. I froze. That wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't something fake boyfriend said, but it worked. I nodded, slipped my arm into his, and together we walked into the engagement party. It was a blur of lights, flower arrangements, and insufferable small talk. My family was there in full force, hugging me tightly, eyeing Aiden discreetly, and whispering behind champagne glasses. Then came the onslaught of questions. So how did you two meet? What does Aiden do? When did you know? I opened my mouth, but Aiden spoke first. We met in a bookstore. She was holding Little Women in one hand and her phone in the other, googling whether or not Jo should have ended up with Laurie. My jaw dropped a little. He smiled. I told her Jo made the right choice, and she told me I was the first person to say that. Everyone laughed. I felt something tighten in my chest. He wasn't just repeating lines. He was painting them. Over the next hour, I watched him charm my noses down, joke with my younger cousin, and win over even the toughest skeptic, my older brother. They adored him. More importantly, they believed him. But what got me wasn't the performance. It was the details. He poured me water without asking. He touched the small of my back when guiding me through the crowd. He asked before taking my hand. His warmth didn't feel calculated, it felt human, and yet I kept reminding myself, this is his job. You paid for this. Ethan showed up halfway through. Of course he did. Same smug smirk, same designer blazer, acting like he still owned the air in every room he entered. He walked toward us like we were waiting for him. Zara, he said, leaning in for a cheek kiss I didn't return. Didn't expect to see you with someone. Clearly, I said. Aiden extended a hand. Aiden Ray's, Zara's boyfriend. Ethan looked at him like he was inspecting a used car. How long has this been going on? 7 months. Aiden replied smoothly. But it feels like longer. When you're lucky enough to meet someone who's been through hell and still finds the strength to love. Time sort of blurs. I blinked. Even Ethan was quiet for a second. Then he laughed. Well, good luck. Zara has a bit of a temper. In case you haven't noticed, I opened my mouth, but Aiden beat me to it. She's fierce, he said calmly. But only when someone tries to hurt her. That's not temper, that's survival. Ethan's smile faltered. Just slightly. But enough. He made an excuse and walked away. I turned to Aiden, stunned. That wasn't in the script, I whispered. He looked at me, really looked, then said, "You didn't deserve what he did to you. Pretend or not, I won't let him speak to you like that." Later that night, after everyone had disappeared and the sky had turned a gentle, bruised shade of purple, we walked through the garden behind the venue. It was quiet. Too quiet. I stopped. Under the lantern lights, arms folded. "Why do you do this? Renting myself out?" he asked. I nodded. He shrugged. "Helps pay the bills. Gives people what they need." "I've always been good at pretending." "Yeah, but you're too good," I murmured. "Like you've lived these stories before." He looked up at the stars before answering, because sometimes pretending is easier than admitting what you've lost. There was a silence between us, not awkward, not forced, just shared. Back at my apartment, he helped me carry some leftover desserts inside. We moved around the kitchen like we'd done it 100 times. I handed him a fork. He passed me a plate. We didn't speak until he did. "I wasn't pretending about what I said to your ex," he said quietly. I froze. He placed the plate down gently. "He doesn't deserve to have that kind of power over you anymore." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. We said goodnight. He took the couch. I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep, because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel so alone, and that scared me more than anything. Morning came with the scent of coffee I didn't make. I walked into the kitchen, hair a mess, wearing an oversized t-shirt that read "socially anxious, but willing to cuddle," not the outfit I wanted my fake boyfriend to see me in. But there he was, Aiden, standing barefoot, leaning against the counter, holding a chipped mug, like he belonged in my kitchen. "Morning," he said, without turning. "Hope you like strong coffee." I stood there for a second, dazed. "You made this?" He looked over his shoulder. I figured it was safer than letting me cook. I smiled reluctantly. "Fair." He poured me a cup, handed it over, and sat across from me at the kitchen table. We sipped in silence for a bit, the kind of silence that didn't demand filling. Then he said, "You sleep okay?" I nodded. "Better than usual." He didn't smile. He just watched me carefully, like my answer was a puzzle. "You always sleep poorly." I shrugged. "Nightmares. Anxiety. Sometimes I just think too much." "The usual." He leaned back in the chair. "Let me guess, your brain replays everything at AM. Including that thing you said 5 years ago that no one else remembers, but you can't forget." I blinked at him. "Have you been reading my journal?" He smirked. "Just a hunch." Later that day, we practiced our couple story. I hated how natural it started to feel. "How do I act when I'm mad at you?" I asked. He pretended to sulk. "You ignore me for a full day, then send a long, poetic text that starts with 'I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.'" I laughed. "That sounds more like something you'd do." He grinned. "Touch." We went out for errands to make it look real on social media. I took photos. He held shopping bags. At one point, I caught him adjusting his jacket in a car mirror, not because he cared how he looked, but because he cared how I looked next to him. I should felt awkward. Instead, I felt seen. That night, he offered to cook dinner mac and cheese from scratch. We ate it sitting on the floor of my tiny living room, watching reruns of a sitcom we both silently judged but secretly enjoyed. It was too easy. Too warm. I found myself glancing at him longer than I should, wondering how someone who was supposed to be temporary could feel so familiar. After dinner, he picked up my guitar. I hadn't touched it in months. Not since my last heartbreak. You play? He asked. Used to, I said. Writing songs helped me not feel things I didn't want to feel. He nodded slowly, his fingers gently strumming. Music does that. Says the things we're scared to admit. He played a soft tune I didn't recognize. The melody floated in the room like something sacred. What song is that? I whispered. He looked up. Something I wrote a long time ago. For someone I lost. I didn't ask more. He didn't offer. But in that moment, I saw him. Not the actor. Not the professional. Just a man holding pieces of a past he hadn't figured out how to let go of. Later, as we both stood brushing our teeth, yes, side by side, like real couples do, I realized something terrifying. This didn't feel fake. It felt like brushing your teeth beside someone who knew how you liked your eggs. Like laughing at inside jokes that didn't need explaining. Like trust, wrapped in the quiet comfort of not needing to perform. Before bed, I asked, do you ever forget where the pretending ends? He paused, toothbrush still in hand. Sometimes, he said honestly. Sometimes the pretending feels better than the real thing ever did. That night, I dreamed I was running through a foggy forest, barefoot. Branches tearing at my clothes. I wasn't running from something, I was running to someone. But I never reached them. I woke up with tears in my eyes and a text from Aiden on my phone. Aiden, we make a good team. Even if it's pretend. Just letting you know. I stared at the screen for a long time, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to respond. I just smiled. Sometimes, it's not the loud crashes that break you. It's the quiet shatters, the things that slip through the cracks unnoticed until they've already undone you. That morning felt ordinary. Soft sunlight, coffee with too much cream, and the way Aiden leaned back in his chair while reading the paper, like he belonged to a different era. We decided to go to my favorite cafe, Bean and Bound. It was where I used to write. Before everything in my life started feeling too hollow to put into words, I hadn't been there in almost a year. The owner, Mrs. Chan, smiled when she saw me. Zara, you've been hiding, trying to escape the chaos, I joked. She turned to Aiden and gave him an approving nod. Ah, so you finally brought someone. He looks like the kind who won't break your heart. I froze. Aiden didn't. He smiled politely and said, trying my best, ma'am. He pulled out my chair before sitting across from me. His hands wrapped around his mug like it was anchoring him to the moment. You okay? He asked, softly. Yeah, I said. Just, it's been a while. This place reminds me of who I was before. Ethan, he didn't push. He just nodded. That was the thing about Aiden, he never asked for pieces of me I wasn't ready to give. We were halfway through brunch when it happened. A tall woman walked in, confident, effortlessly beautiful. Long dark hair, sharp jawline, heels that clicked across the wooden floor like punctuation marks. She froze when she saw our table, then said, Aiden. I looked up from my omelette. His face changed, just slightly. But I noticed, Tessa, he said after a pause. Didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, she said, eyes flicking to me. This must be someone new. Before I could speak, Aiden said, this is Zara, my girlfriend. The word girlfriend tasted strange, coming from him. Like it didn't quite fit, but he wanted it to. Tessa smiled tight and sharp. Well, I guess you moved on faster than I thought. Aiden's voice dropped. That's not fair. You're right, she said with a shrug. Ghosting you was fairer, wasn't it? She didn't wait for an answer. Just walked out, her perfume lingering behind like a memory. I stared at him. You okay? I asked. He didn't look at me. That was unexpected. Who was she? I already knew, but I needed to hear it. My ex-fiancé, he said, his voice flat. I leaned forward. The one who ghosted you? He nodded. Silence again. The kind that wasn't comforting. I didn't know you were engaged, I said quietly. He looked at me then like he'd forgotten who he was pretending to be for a second. We were together for 4 years. She left a note on the kitchen counter. Said she couldn't handle my grief. I blinked. Grief? My dad passed 6 months before the wedding. I shut down, I guess. She said I stopped being romantic. Stopped being me. That's awful. He gave a half smile. What's worse is that part of me believed her. Like maybe I wasn't enough anymore. There was pain behind his words. Deep, lived-in pain. You're not that guy anymore, I said gently. He shook his head. No, I'm a rented boyfriend now. I reached across the table, touched his hand. You're more than that. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I didn't care that this was supposed to be fake. That night, we sat in my apartment again. Neither of us spoke about the CAF. Instead, we played a game of 20 questions. First heartbreak? He asked. My best friend in college fell in love with him. He fell in love with someone else. I didn't even make the first cut. Ouch, he said. I nodded. Yours, my mother, he said, without flinching. She left when I was 10. Came back once when I was 18. Just to tell me she didn't want to be found. I stared at him. Still think you're the only one with baggage. He said with a crooked smile. I never said that, I replied. He leaned back on the couch, arms behind his head. You don't have to. I see it in your eyes. You think you're too damaged to be loved properly. That hit harder than I wanted it to. Maybe we both are, I whispered. He shook his head. No one's too broken for love. Just too scared of it. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. But something changed that night. The script we'd written for our fake romance was being overwritten quietly, stubbornly by real moments that refused to stay inside the lines. The next morning, I found a sticky note on the fridge. For what it's worth, I don't think you're pretending anymore. Neither am I. I pressed my hand against it and wondered how long we could keep lying to ourselves before it all fell apart. I once believed feelings came with labels clearly marked, easy to understand. But Aiden, he didn't fit into any box I knew. We weren't dating. We weren't strangers. And yet, he knew me better than people I'd known for years. The lines between pretend and real had been blurring for a while, but this week, they vanished. It started when Lana texted me insisting I come to the PI wedding dinner. I hadn't planned on it, but Aiden insisted. Let's go, he said. Your ex will be there. I need more chances to annoy him with my existence. I laughed. You're oddly good at that, he winked. It's a gift. We arrived a few minutes late. Everyone was seated already, except for 2 chairs at the center of a long table, right next to Ethan. Lana had done that on purpose. I gave her a look across the table. She smiled sweetly, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. I sat down. Aiden. Beside me. Ethan cleared his throat dramatically. Good of you to join us. Fashionably late. Better late than toxic, I muttered. Aiden heard me. Smiled into his water glass. Conversation flowed like forced small talk always does. Someone asked Ethan about his new girlfriend. She's different, he said. You know, supportive. Warm. Not cold and distant. I stiffened. Aiden reached under the table and gently squeezed my hand. It was such a small gesture, but my whole body relaxed. I turned to him, whispering, "You okay?" He smiled. "Worried about you." I was about to say something real, but then someone else spoke. Zara, a family friend, asked, "How did Aiden propose?" I choked on my water. Aiden didn't miss a beat. He turned to me, eyes twinkling. "Tell them, babe." I stared at him, trying to remember what story we'd made up. But we hadn't planned for this, and then he started talking. I proposed. At a bookstore, he said, where we met. I slipped the ring into her copy of Little Women, right at the page where Joe says goodbye to Laurie. The entire table roared. She cried, he continued, looking at me. I cried. It was chaos. But I wouldn't change a second of it. He touched my cheek. Just briefly, but it felt like the whole room faded. Even Ethan, even Lana, even the stupid candles flickering on the table. All I saw was him. All I felt was him. Later that night, back at my apartment, we didn't talk about dinner. We sat on the balcony, watching the city breathe. I turned to him. Was any of that story real? He shrugged. Parts? Which parts? He didn't answer. Instead, he said, I think I'm in trouble. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because this. You. None of this feels like a job anymore. My breath caught, and then, before I could overthink it, before I could talk myself out of what I'd already been feeling, he kissed me. It was slow, soft, terrified, like he was asking a question with his lips and begging me not to lie in my answer. And I didn't. I kissed him back. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't perfect. It was real. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other. Until he whispered that wasn't in the contract. I smiled, heart racing. Maybe we should rewrite the contract. He laughed, really laughed for the first time since I met him. And I realized then I wasn't renting love anymore. I was falling into it. Free-falling.no safety net.no script. Just the terrifying, beautiful chaos of something real. But if I've learned anything about love, especially love that starts with lies, it's that the fall always comes before the crash. And I had no idea what was coming next. I didn't expect our fourth episode to spark a mini internet frenzy. Our question of the week had been, would you choose comfort or passion in love? I had picked comfort. Because passion fades, I had said. He picked passion. Because comfort without desire feels like friendship with handcuffs, he argued. The comments poured in. Some backed me. Others called him bold and romantic. One even wrote, you two are like fire and water, opposite, but perfect together. I laughed when I read it. Then paused. Because deep down, I was starting to wonder the same. A late-night voice message that night, I received a voice message on our private podcast account from him. Hey, I hope this doesn't weed you out, but after today's episode, I kept thinking about your answer, and I think you're probably right. Passion is loud, but comfort is where people rest. You said that really well. Just wanted to say that. Sleep well, Echo. I listened to it twice and saved it. That was the first time he called me Echo. IRL complications me. Life outside the podcast was getting tangled. Logan and I had bumped into each other again at a mutual friends gathering. He'd been with a girl, of course, but he spotted me and came over. "Hey, long time," he smiled, casually leaning on the counter. "You look different." "I feel different," I said plainly. "Still writing your novels?" "Something like that," I said. I didn't want to mention the podcast. Not to him. "You should've texted me back," he said softly, and for a moment, old emotions stirred. But then I thought about the voice message from him, the one that lingered in my heart more than Logan's touch ever did. Podcast episode 5 there. One that got away. I was nervous for this one because it was raw, emotional. We talked about past regrets. He shared about a girl from his college days, a friend he fell for but never told. I was too proud, too sure she'd say no, so I said nothing. And now she's married. We follow each other on Instagram. But yeah, that ship sailed. I shared about Logan, about how I mistook validation for love. He wasn't cruel, I told the MIC, but he made me feel like I had to compete for his attention, like I was never quite enough. And for years, I thought that was normal. There was a pause. Then he whispered, "You're more than enough now. Whoever made you feel otherwise didn't deserve you." I blinked, swallowed hard, because in that moment, I wanted to reach through the audio and just hold him, whoever he was. The first time I dreamed of him, he didn't know what he looked like, but in my dream, he had kind eyes and a quiet smile. We were sitting on a rooftop, watching the city lights, laughing about something no one else would find funny, and just before I woke up, he leaned in and whispered, "Echo, I know you." A curveball from the producer. Then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. We received a message from our producer, Taylor. "Guys, great news. A big podcast festival wants you to appear for a live, unmasked session. They loved your dynamic. Think about it first reveal. We'll keep your faces hidden online till the event. Let's build the hype." I froze. A live reveal in front of hundreds. It was terrifying and thrilling. We hadn't even exchanged real names. He texted first, "So, what do you think?" Live reveal. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "It's scary," I admitted. "But maybe we owe it to the listeners. And maybe to each other." His reply was almost immediate. "Then let's do it. But one condition." "What's that?" "I want to meet you 5 minutes before we go on stage. Not a second earlier." "Why?" "Because I want our first look to be exactly as real as everything we've said on that MIC." I sat there, smiling, crying, terrified, but deep down, I knew I was going to fall harder than I already had. When I returned from the CAF that night, I couldn't stop shaking. Not from cold but from adrenaline. From the way his eyes had searched mine. From the warmth in his voice when he said, "I'd love to meet her. The girl who writes like she's lived 1,000 lives." He didn't know it was me. I collapsed on my bed, face buried in my pillow, muffling a scream of nerves and excitement. I felt like I was on the edge of something massive, some invisible line between fantasy and reality, and one small step would tip the scales. Over the next few days, my blog gained even more traction. People speculated more about who Lily in the Shadows was. Even newspapers were publishing think pieces. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to his private world of cameras, meetings, and heartbreak. But he kept coming to the CAF every day, and we'd talk books, coffee, city noise, childhood dreams, nothing and everything. His guard came down. He laughed more. He talked more. He relaxed. He looked happier. And so did I. Then one day, everything almost came crashing down. It was a rainy Friday. The streets outside were slick, neon lights reflecting in puddles. Daniel sat across from me, a notebook in his hand, his signature blazer damp around the edges. He opened the notebook slowly, revealing pages filled with handwriting, his, not polished press releases or company reports. No, this was raw. He passed it to me silently. I skimmed the first lines. I'm falling for a girl I barely know. She's like the blog I can't stop reading, honest, mysterious, and full of hidden pain. And I think she might be my saving grace. My throat tightened. He had written about me, but still didn't know it. Or maybe he did. My heart pounded as I looked up. Who is this about? He smiled softly, eyes warm. Just a muse. Someone who reminds me of what it means to feel, to risk. I handed it back, hands trembling. She sounds special. She is, he whispered. And I don't want to lose her before I even know who she is. The room was quiet. Even the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. I wanted to tell him. I really did. But the fear, the vulnerability, it stopped me cold. Because what if he hated me for hiding? What if I was just a fantasy in his head, and the real me would shatter it? That night, I walked home soaked. No umbrella, rain soaking my shoes, thoughts soaking my soul. I opened my laptop, heart racing, and typed a new blog post. To the one who's unknowingly read my heart, you sit across from me every day, notebook in hand, eyes that hold galaxies. I want to tell you it's me, but I'm terrified. Because if I lose this, I lose the only person who's ever really seen me. I hit publish and went to bed praying he'd understand someday. The next morning, chaos erupted. My blog went viral again, but this time, it wasn't just strangers reading. It was Daniel, and he left a comment. A simple one. Come to the rooftop of Atlas Tower at sunset. No masks, just truth. My breath left my body in one sharp exhale. That rooftop was where his father once hosted exclusive events. It was now locked off to the public. I stared at the screen, fingers numb. Was this it? The moment everything changed? Was I ready? I didn't know, but I knew one thing. I couldn't run anymore. When I woke up the next morning, the light in the sky felt different, cleaner, softer, like the world had been rinsed of something heavy. I stretched beneath my sheets, and for the first time in days, my dreams didn't feel like threats or riddles. They felt like bridges. I walked into the memory library that morning with a steadier heart. Even my the curator, smiled at me with a kind of knowing that made me pause. You've found the shelf, haven't you? She asked, almost gently. I nodded. And I'm going back today. She touched my shoulder briefly. When you leave that room, your heart will remember more than your mind ever could. Be careful with what you take out, and even more careful with what you leave behind. I swallowed hard. What if I lose myself again? Then you'll find yourself again. That's what love does. It returns you. The hallway to the fifth shelf felt longer than usual, echoes bouncing off the walls like whispers. When I reached the door, I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and stepped inside. The room had changed. It no longer flickered in and out of place. The books no longer trembled. Everything was still, solid, waiting, and on the table, beside the book I'd left open the night before, was a letter, a real paper letter with handwriting that pulled at something deep inside me. I picked it up slowly, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. Dear Ava, If you're reading this, then you're starting to remember. You and I, our story was never ordinary. We made choices that cost us memories, lives, and timelines. But I made the hardest one of all. I let you go. I hoped that one day you'd come back, that the library would call you again, that your heart would seek the truth. I'm still here, waiting. Callum, Callum. That name sent a shiver down my spine, like an echo bouncing across the years. I stared at the book again. I remembered bits of him now, his laugh, the way he always ran one hand through his hair when he was nervous, how his voice used to soften when he said my name. I flipped more pages, desperate now, and then I hit one that wasn't faded, a new memory. Vivid, burning. We were standing in a field of orange poppies, the sun setting behind us. I was crying. He held my face in his hands. I'll come back for you, Ava, he whispered, no matter how long it takes, and I, with trembling lips, kissed him, for what I didn't know was the last time. The memory stopped there. I gasped, the sensation of it still lingering on my lips. My heart felt like it had been struck with a bolt of lightning. I sat back, dizzy with realization. Callum hadn't left me. I had chosen to forget him. Why? That's when I noticed another book, thicker, darker, bound in black leather. It hadn't been there yesterday. It was marked, The Chosen Forgetting. I opened it. Inside were stories of people who had given up their memories willingly, sacrificing them to save someone, or something, or themselves. And there, in the middle, was my name, Ava Lamley. Subject: requested memory erasure after unauthorized timeline breach resulting in fatal paradox. Emotional memory regarding Callum was archived in section VEG. Request filed voluntarily. My breath caught. I had broken time to save him, and the only way to restore balance was to give him up. A sob tore from my throat. I remembered it now, the moment I signed the parchment in Mail's office, the grief swallowing me whole as I forgot him one heartbeat at a time. He didn't abandon me. I abandoned us to save his life. I clutched the letter to my chest, trembling. How could I ever make this right? The final page of The Chosen Forgetting had a red seal unbroken. I to read. To retrieve what was lost, you must return to the moment it was taken. I had to go back. But how? As if in answer, the floor beneath me began to glow, a soft silver circle etching itself into the ground. A portal. A time gate. Mael had told me the library changed for those who remembered. And I was remembering everything now. I stepped into the light. The book still clutched in one hand, the letter in the other. A flash brighter than anything I'd ever seen swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the poppy field. The sun was setting again, and there he was. Callum. Exactly as I remembered. Older, weathered, but those eyes. They saw me, and I saw the moment his breath caught, like the universe had paused to let his heart speak. Ava, he whispered. I couldn't speak. I ran. I threw my arms around him, the weight of everything between us crashing down. I remember. I choked out. I remember everything. His arms tightened around me, and for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, I was home. I never stopped waiting, he murmured. Even when they told me you were gone, I pulled back, searching his face. They told me forgetting you would save you, and remembering me brings us back. We kissed. And this time, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A year passed. The seasons rolled by like chapters in an old storybook. The once vibrant pulse of my days in Lara had quieted into soft hums of routine life. I had returned to the city, back to my piano classes, back to the modest apartment where silence echoed more often than sound. but something within me had changed forever. I had learned to laugh again. Not the loud kind that fills a room, but the warm, sincere laughter that bubbles from healing. That little music school I once dreamed of. It was real now. Just a tiny studio with 6 students. But it existed. It breathed. It sang. I would catch myself looking out the window during class breaks, eyes drifting toward the east, toward the direction of the sea and the mountains beyond it, toward Lyra and toward Elias. He never reached out, not once, and I never did either. There was something deeply poetic and painful about a love that lived in memory but chose not to disturb the present. Our goodbye had become sacred, a still frame I wasn't brave enough to move beyond. But then, one day, the universe played a chord I didn't expect. It was late spring. My music school was holding a recital at the community center, a tiny, heartfelt affair with mismatched chairs and hand-drawn posters. I was helping a shy student with her violin tuning when I heard a voice behind me. Familiar, steady. I was told there's a melody here I forgot, but one that never forgot me. I turned. There he was, Elias. His eyes looked older, tired even, but still held the same warmth. He had grown a little beard, carried a leather satchel, wore a brown coat far too warm for spring, like he hadn't quite adjusted to this new life yet. For a moment, I said nothing. My world froze. I didn't know if I'd be welcome. He said, voice soft. But I hoped I'd still be remembered. You were never forgotten, I replied, the words barely more than a whisper. We didn't embrace. We didn't cry. We just stood there, strangers tied together by an invisible thread, unsure whether to pull or cut. After the event, we walked quietly through the nearby park. The sun had set and golden light filtered through the trees. He told me he'd left Lyra 5 months after I did, sold his family estate, opened a small art gallery in a sleepy town nearby, painted every day, thought of me every day too. I kept hearing your music in my dreams, he said. Even when I tried to move on, I tried to forget you, I admitted. But the heart has a terrible memory. It forgets pain easily but not love. He smiled, then silence again, but not the heavy kind this time. Do you still believe in impossible love? He asked. No, I replied. I believe in complicated love, but never impossible. He nodded, the breeze tugging softly at his coat. Then, let's begin again, he said. Not from where we left off, but from right here, right now. I laughed, tears in my eyes. No grand declarations, no sweeping speeches. I brought you something, he said, fumbling in his satchel. He pulled out a tiny music box. Old, worn. He wound it. The melody it played, it was ours. The first tune I ever played for him on the hill. I clutched the little box like it was the most precious thing in the world, because it was, because he was, because we were, not the same as before, not perfect, but real, and in that moment, we knew some love. Stories don't restart with fireworks. They begin again with a simple song. The little music box's melody swirled around us, fragile and beautiful, a haunting echo of the past and a gentle promise for the future. I held it tight, feeling the weight of all we'd lost and found. Elias looked at me with a softness I'd never seen before. Life took us on different paths, he said quietly, but it also brought us here. I don't expect forever. I just want to walk forward together, if you'll have me. Tears blurred my vision, but my smile was steady. Yes, I whispered. Let's start from here. The weeks that followed were a dance between rediscovery and healing. We talked about everything: the dreams we'd chased, the fears we'd buried, the moments we wished we could relive. Our love wasn't perfect. It was messy and slow, with stumbles and hesitations. But it was ours, and every day, the music played on. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Elias took my hand and led me to a small clearing beneath the stars. There, surrounded by glowing lanterns, he pulled out a simple ring. "I can't promise a flawless story," he said, voice steady, "but I can promise this: to be your partner in all the chapters yet to come." I nodded, heart full. "I will," I said. The music box melody played softly as we embraced, two souls reunited, not by fate alone, but by choice. The past was a collection of memories, both painful and sweet. The future, a song we'd write together, note by note, day by day. And this time, the song would never end. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment love, so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.